of the motherfucking morning to you, my friends. Welcome one, welcome all to my podcast, Alexandra Unfiltered, a show where we hypothesize, theorize, and analyze all about women's rights, women's wrongs, and everything in between. I am your gracious host, Alexandra Rose, a bad bee with a law degree, simply doing what I do best. Ranting, raving, whining, and complaining. And not necessarily in that order. I have some good content lined up for you today. And before we dive into our content, I'd first like to wish everyone here in the US a very happy Thanksgiving. For all who celebrate, I certainly hope your Thanksgiving holiday is filled with love, joy, happiness, and comfort as you gather around the table to spend time with your loved ones and your friends and your family to reminisce on everything that you are thankful and grateful for, even in these very trying times. Even for those of us who may not necessarily have family that we can gather around the table with because we've had to block people to protect our mental health and our peace of mind. Trust me, you are valid. I see you, I hear you, I acknowledge you, and I hope you nonetheless have a wonderful holiday. So diving into our content today, I wanted to talk about this topic. I have wanted to talk about this topic for some time, and it took me some time to do my research and to gather my notes. Rest assured, I have my handy dandy iPad with all of my statistics and facts, and bear in mind for today's topic, I will definitely be wearing my sociology hat, all right? Because before I was a bad bee with a law degree, I was a bad bee with a sociology degree and an anthropology minor. Don't forget. Today's topic is the feminization of poverty and the war on women's wallets. Okay, so first, I thought it best to start with a definition of what is the feminization of poverty. How is it defined? And there are a few different definitions floating around. When I conducted my research, the definition I thought that was most relevant, especially for 21st century discussions here in the United States, was the definition I found as provided by the Center for American Progress. The Center for American Progress defines the feminization of poverty as a trend of increasing inequality in living standards between men and women due to the widening gender gap in poverty. This phenomenon, the feminization of poverty, links to how women and children are disproportionately represented within lower socioeconomic statuses in comparison to men within those same socioeconomic statuses. So what does all of that academic, ivory-towered mumbo-jumbo translate to in plain English? In plain English, it basically means that the feminization of poverty states that due to cultural, social, economic, and other societal factors, women everywhere experience higher rates of poverty than men, regardless of race, ethnicity, nationality, age, educational level, geographic location, etc. So that is the feminization of poverty, all right? Basically saying that no matter where you go in the world, no matter who or what other factors are at play when you're looking at a cisgender man and a cisgender woman, statistically, the cisgender woman is more likely to be impoverished than the man. Essentially, the world's poor are made up of primarily women, and even more so, women with children. And we'll get into that in this episode as well. For our discussion today, I will be referring to statistics that are primarily statistics drawn from the population here in the United States, as I felt that discussing this trend, this phenomenon, as it applies to American women is most relevant, seeing that I am an American woman and that most of my listeners here and subscribers here are also American. Additionally, because America is the premier, preeminent global superpower, trends in America usually determine how trends will play out in other countries around the world, which is why you'll hear me talking mostly about American statistics as opposed to my usual global approach to certain topics. Another note, too, is I'll be using a phrase throughout this podcast, throughout this episode, called the federal poverty line. And I want to give you guys a basic understanding or definition of what the federal poverty line is. According to the Center for American Progress, the federal poverty line is defined as the minimum annual income for individuals and families needed to pay for necessities as determined by the U.S. government. To give you some numbers background, in 2018, the federal poverty line was set as an annual income of $13,064 for a single individual younger than age 65, and $25,465 for a family of 4 with 2 adults and 2 children. That's according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Okay. Another note as well, because we have notes on notes on notes. I told you I'll be wearing my sociology hat for this discussion. While the American federal poverty line is an important measure for economic security, and while it is also widely used to determine eligibility for many public assistance programs, it is important to note that the very narrow definition of the American federal poverty guideline is outdated. It doesn't include certain factors such as, for example, it will include the cost of food, but will not include other existential factors when determining whether or not a family has access to food, such as geographic location, whether that family is located in a food desert, whether that family has transportation to access said food, so on and so forth. So it is a very narrow, somewhat outdated measure that, there's growing consensus for the U.S. Census Bureau to update that definition to be a little bit more inclusive, a little bit more holistic, if you will. However, due to the ubiquity of this definition of the federal poverty line, and due to its very real implications in determining people's eligibility for various programs, for the purposes of this episode's discussion, we will use the federal poverty line definition as it stands, which is individuals falling below 100% of the federal poverty line, unless otherwise specified. All right, so we have some background. We have our definition of the feminization of poverty, and we have our definition of the federal poverty line as it exists here in the United States. All right, so what are some stats and facts regarding the feminization of poverty as cisgender women experience it here in the States? So looking at the big picture, globally, women of nearly all races and ethnicities face higher rates of poverty than their male counterparts. In fact, according to the Beijing conference hosted by UN Women in May 2000, the gap between men and women caught in the cycle of poverty was predicted to increase in the upcoming decade. And again, this was at a conference hosted by UN Women in May of 2000, which as of the date of the recording of this episode was 24 years ago. So over 20 years ago, we were worried about the feminization of poverty becoming an increasing trend, right? Here in the United States, there are certain sub-factors or subcategories of cisgender women that impact and determine how likely that cisgender woman is to experience poverty. So looking at poverty among Black women and women of color here in the United States. In the US, the highest rates of poverty are experienced by American Indian or Alaskan Native women, Black women, and Latina women, according to data from the Center for American Progress. About 1 in 4 American Indian or Alaskan Native women live in poverty, and that subset of women currently experiences the highest rate of poverty among women of any racial or ethnic group in the entire country. Women of color and Black women are disproportionately represented among women living in poverty. While Latina women represent only 18.1% of all women in the US, they constitute a whopping 27.1% of women in poverty. Similarly, Black women represent 22.3% of women in poverty, but only make up 12.8% of all women in the US population. And this is data I'm pulling from, again, the Center for American Progress. So looking at poverty among all women in the United States, in 2018, the Center for American Progress determined that 12.9% of all women in the US lived in poverty, compared with 10.6% of men. So I'm going to pause for a moment because I understand I have just basically trauma dumped a lot of information on you. It's a lot to take in. According to data from the Center for American Progress in the year of our Lord 2018, 12.9% of all women in the US lived in poverty, compared to only 10.6% of men. That's a big difference to me. It might seem like a small margin of error, 10.6% of men versus 12.9% of women. That's almost 2 whole percent. And when you're accounting for a US population that is more than 360 million people, that 2% margin means the difference between tens of millions of more women experiencing poverty than men. And remember, the feminization of poverty, the definition includes that women and men, even if they occupy the same socioeconomic status, even still, women are still more likely to experience poverty than the men in their same class. So keep that in mind. Nearly 10 million women in America live in deep poverty, which is defined as falling below 50% of the federal poverty line. So going back to the definition of the federal poverty line, right? The federal poverty line is the minimum annual income for individuals and families needed to pay for necessities. And in 2018, that poverty line for a single individual younger than 65 was $13,064 per year. Okay? And the Center for American Progress is telling us that in 2018, nearly 10 million American women were in deep poverty or falling below 50% of that federal poverty line. So 50% of $13,000. I'm not really good with math, and I know 13 is not an even number. So less than $7,000 per year of income is what more than 10 million women in America live off of. 7,000, I think the number would be like $6,000 to $7,000 per year of income is more than what 10 million American women live off of and have to live and purchase food and housing and transportation and childcare and healthcare. $6,000 to $7,000 per year. And there are people who make that in one biweekly paycheck like it's nothing. There are people who make that in one day. Billionaires make that in half a second, literally. That's crazy, right? Then we also have the other subcategory, and with the difference between poverty in mothers who are married versus mothers who are unmarried. By and large, unmarried mothers have higher rates of poverty than married women with or without children. And unmarried mothers will have higher rates of poverty than unmarried women without children. In fact, here in the United States, almost 1/4 of unmarried mothers live below the poverty line. In 2018, 11.9 million children in America younger than age 18 lived in poverty, making up 31.1% of those living in poverty. And that is according to data from the Center for American Progress. 11.9 million children in America younger than age 18 living in poverty. So feminization of poverty then doesn't just apply to adult women. It applies to the children that adult women bring into this world. Now, I am of the belief that it takes two to tango. Typically, a cisgender heterosexual woman is not an asexual being. She needs a cisgender heterosexual man, or even just a cisgender man, to reproduce. She doesn't lay down and say to herself, gosh, I can close my eyes and I want to wake up pregnant. And boom, the stork drops the baby off at the front porch or something, or leaves the baby in the chimney. I don't fucking know. I don't have kids. But no, it takes two to tango. It definitely takes two to tango. The woman doesn't get pregnant by herself. She does it with the aid of a man. You need a man's ejaculate, his sperm, and you need a woman's reproductive organ, specifically her eggs, to be fertilized by said sperm, for a child to be brought into this world. So if it takes two people to create a child, why is only the mother the one who will likely fall into poverty as a result of having a child? And why is the child also likely to fall into poverty with the mother as well? There's an old adage, I believe, an old saying that says something like, as the mother goes, so goes the children. I think I see a lot of that with the feminization of poverty, because a lot of my research came back showing that regardless of the socioeconomic status of the man or the father, if the woman occupies a specific class status, then the child is more likely to occupy the same class status as his or her mother, regardless of what the class status is of the father. That's how endemic poverty is among women the world over. So you can begin to see through this discussion, through these topics, how much of a problem this is. Because if women in America experience this, and America is the preeminent global superpower that generally sets the tone for the rest of the world, then what are women in the rest of the world experiencing? Women who don't have American infrastructure and the autonomy to vote and to work and earn income. Do you see what I mean? Do you see I'm leading you down the primrose path of patriarchal pitfalls that is the feminization of poverty. It absolutely is a pitfall. And the fact that you being born a woman and then deciding to one day become a mom, those two factors alone have stronger determinants on whether or not you end up in poverty than, say, your educational level or your job title. That's crazy. But men who have children, it makes no never mind, basically. All my research came back showing that regardless of whether or not a man has children, him having children is not a determining factor into whether he falls into poverty. Him being born a man is not a determining factor into whether he falls into poverty. He has other factors that impact him more greatly than women who, if you're just born a woman, boom, you have a far likelier chance of falling into poverty. And then if you're born a woman and then have a child, you've doubled that chance. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that wild? That's booty butt wild to me. I'm sorry. So there are even more subcategories of poverty among women in America, because there are differences among poverty experienced by women of different ages. Poverty rates for women and men are nearly even throughout childhood, but that gap widens significantly for women ages 18 to 44, because what are those ages, 18 to 44? Prime childbearing years. And in fact, the poverty gap again widens between men and women for women age 75 and older. Beginning at age 5, the poverty rate is higher among women than men over the course of their lifetimes, according to data from the Center for American Progress. So let's pause there as well. So you mean to tell me that the feminization of poverty among women in America starts as early as age 5? A 5-year-old little girl in America begins to experience poverty that early, that young, a child who just was born, who just learned how to who just became potty trained. And before they can even develop some emotional intelligence, they have to worry about fighting poverty. Age 5, the poverty rate is higher among women than men over the course of their lifetimes. It starts that early. So remember last week when I was talking about the painful reality of period poverty? Do you see how all of this trends and blends into this ongoing discussion of systemic, institutionalized oppression of women, and how on women it literally starts from the moment we are born and determined to be a woman? Do you see that? Because starting at age 5, the poverty rate is higher among women than men over the course of our lifetimes. 5 years, imagine if you can, remember yourself at the age of 5 years old. I have some memory of myself at 5. I liked certain cartoons. I liked Disney movies. I liked spending time with my mommy. My daddy was an alcoholic and he had his moments, but when he was sane and sober, he was pretty cool. I have those memories at age 5. I cannot fathom having to also worry about fighting poverty at the age of 5. So then what happens then, or rather, I want you to think about what happens to that same young girl who now has to worry about fighting poverty starting age 5 when she turns age 11, 12, 13 and begins menstruating. And on top of fighting regular poverty, now she has to go add period poverty to it, the topic we discussed last week. This is real life. This is real life. This is what I mean when I say, I said it a few episodes ago, that in these patriarchal mind games, women always lose and men never lose. It's not that men always win, but they never lose. But women always lose. Think about that. Between the ages of 25 and 34, women in America, are 69% more likely than men of the same age to live in poverty. Between ages 25 and 34, women are 69% more likely than men of the same age to live in poverty. So I can use myself as an example, because in my last episode talking about period poverty, I was vulnerable with you guys, and I will continue to be vulnerable because there is not only truth and honesty, there's power in honesty. All right, because shame and oppression thrive in silence. Oppression and oppressive tactics to humiliate oppressed people is designed to silence us so we don't speak about these things that are happening to us and they can continue to perpetuate. I am a 32-year-old millennial, bad B with a law degree. So I graduated from law school with a Juris Doctor. I have a JD, that's a doctoral level degree behind my name. And before I got the JD, I got the Bachelor of Arts, or the BA, in sociology with a minor in anthropology and a specialization in peace and justice studies. And what do I tell you guys all the time, despite being a 32-year-old millennial who is child-free with a law degree? I have to live at home with my mom and my sister to make ends meet, because I don't earn the same as a man in my class with my same educational background. And I'm buried in student loan debt. And we'll even get into how student loan debt uniquely impacts women in America as well. Because yes, all of these systems work hand in hand to oppress us, honey, okay? They work in tandem. But yes, I am in that age group between 25 and 34. I'm 32. And according to this data from the Center for American Progress, I'm 69% more likely than a man of my same age group to live in poverty. And I'm experiencing it firsthand. While the gap in poverty rates between men and women narrows after age 34, so I have something to look forward to, that gap never fully closes throughout our adult lives. And in fact, that same poverty rate gap will widen in old age, because 13.2% of women in America aged 75 years and older live in poverty, compared with 8.8% of men who are the same age. I'm clapping, I'm giving a hand clap of praise to the patriarchy for ensuring that from birth until literal death, women are oppressed on all fronts. There is no escape, okay? Because 13.2% of women in America aged 75 years and older live in poverty, compared with 8.8% of men who are the same age. That's damn near a 5% gap. And in a country that has over 360 million residents, that 5% gap means a difference of tens of millions of women living in poverty versus men who are the same age. Again, whoever came up with these patriarchal systems way back when, the founding of time, when Neanderthals became Homo sapiens and we went from being hunter-gatherers to living in civilizations, they did their big thing with this one. They really did, because the patriarchy ensures that we are oppressed from birth to death. We are oppressed when we're sick. We're oppressed when we're single. We're oppressed when we're married. We're oppressed when we're child-free. We're oppressed when we have children. There's no winning. It's like they don't want you to get out of it. But I have something for them, okay? I am a bad bee with a law degree on a mission to see this patriarchal system destroyed. If not in my lifetime, then in my future descendants' lifetimes, because I don't know if I'll have children. I'm unsure about that as of yet. Okay. There are also further subcategories of women here in the US that tell us basically certain factors that are at play that determine whether a woman here in the US will experience poverty. Disability status is a big one. So here in the US, women with disabilities are more likely to live in poverty than both men with disabilities and individuals without disabilities. So God forbid that you're a disabled woman on top of everything. You're more likely to be poor than the same men who have the same disabilities than you, or rather have the same disabilities as you. Wild, crazy, okay? That's one thing one thing I've really observed with patriarchal systems is like the patriarchy sort of gets itself off on double standards. It really revels in watching women suffer and then watching men who have similar life demographics, like they're the similar age or they live in a similar place or they practice the similar religion or work in the same profession, watching those men thrive while the women in those same positions suffer. Both patriarchal systems and white supremacist systems get off on that double standard. Like, aha, tee hee hee, you have to suffer, right? I can do whatever I want because I'm the one who holds the cards. I'm the one who holds the power. So the standards that I say apply to you, they don't apply to me. I can live a life full of ease and happiness and wealth that you can't get to live. And the only way you get to access what I have is if you follow what I say you should do, right? But I don't have to follow those same rules. They did their big thing with patriarchy. Okay. One more factor that determines whether or not a woman in America will experience poverty is sexual orientation and gender identity. Although those are technically due to two different factors, for the purposes of this discussion, I'm kind of lumping them under one umbrella term because sexual orientation and gender identity all too often go hand in hand. So here in the US, LGBTQ women experience higher rates of poverty than cisgender straight women and men due to the intersections of discrimination based on gender, sexual orientation, and gender identity or expression. A 2019 survey by UCLA Law School's Williams Institute found that 17.9% of lesbian cisgender women, 29.4% of bisexual cisgender women, and 29.4% of transgender people lived in poverty, compared with 17.8% of straight cisgender women and 13.4% of straight cisgender men. Let that one sit. So God forbid you have the audacity to be born a woman, and then you go and add insult to injury by deciding to have children. Then you rub salt in the wound by either being born disabled or becoming disabled through accident or illness. And then you're gay. Patriarchy just says, fuck you if you're a woman, right? No matter what kind of woman you are, just fuck you. Damn, stupid bitch. So thought about that before you decided to be born. That's essentially what the patriarchy is telling us. Okay, and that's why I'm here for it, all right? A bad bee with a law degree who likes to yap and likes the sound of her own voice. Okay, I have a philosophy of pay evil unto evil. So one of my least favorite phenomenons in this world are bullies. I detest and hate bullies. And patriarchal systems are nothing more than big bad bullies who sometimes their bark is worse than their bite. So I personally believe in bullying the bully back. I believe in traumatizing the person who is trying to traumatize me or traumatizing the system that is trying to traumatize me. But that's just me. I have several dozens of lived experiences that make me this way. My therapist knows all about them. Laughing to keep from crying. But that's what I believe. And that's why I'm sitting here talking to you, screaming into the void for whoever happens to listen to this and, like and subscribe to this as well. That yes, these patriarchal systems and stats and facts and definitions all exist, but so do we. We have the power to dismantle this. The thing is, though, we have to do it together, right? Okay. So moving on. We understand what the definition of feminization of poverty is, and we've looked into different statistics and facts and factors that go into determining how a woman in America will or will not experience poverty. Now we come to the meat and potatoes of this discussion. Why is poverty feminized? The dangerous combination of systemic sexism and racism within institutional structures across American society restrict the employment opportunities available to women. They restrict the availability of caregiving support, and they restrict the access to public social assistance programs that are available to women. This heady mix of cross-class, cross-racial oppression leads to higher rates of poverty among women, particularly women of color and Black women, compared with men. So some of the factors that contribute to this restriction that is the feminization of poverty include: 1, the gender wage gap. On average, women earn less than men, and the wage gaps are wider for Black women and women of color. Based on the 2018 U.S. Census Bureau data, women working full-time year-round earn an average of 82 cents for every dollar earned by their male counterparts. Okay, pause, flag on the play. So while I'm busting my ass off, bad bee with a law degree, doing what I do best, whether it's ranting, raving, whining, complaining, whether it's clerking in a high-end law firm, whether it's interning for a high-end, or rather a well-known prosecutor's office while I was in law school, whether it's doing anything, no matter how hard I do it, no matter how well I do it, no matter the fact that I graduated number 9 in my law school class, none of that means anything. What matters the most is that I'm a woman, and that I'm a non-white woman at that. Those factors, more than my education, more than my work ethic, determine how much I will earn, even when I am in the same profession as the man, even when I have the same qualifications as required by the profession that the man has, even when I am working in the literal same exact job role at the same exact company with the same exact years of experience, with the same exact degrees, I will still statistically earn 82 cents for every dollar earned by my male counterpart. Are you so fucking serious right now? I'm sorry, I couldn't wait to drop the F-bomb, but are you so serious right now? Are you so serious right now? So what you're telling me is that patriarchal oppression is such that no matter how hard I work, no matter how many degrees I obtain, no matter how long I delay motherhood, I will still never earn as much as a man. Okay. For every dollar earned by white, non-Hispanic men, Latina women earn 54 cents. American Indian, Alaskan Native women earn 57 cents. And Black women earn 62 cents. So every dollar that a white man makes, a Black woman earns 62 cents. And a Latina woman earns 54 cents. And an American Indian and or Alaskan Native woman earns 57 cents. So like what? Less than half? So women of color and Black women earn less than half of what our white male counterparts earn. Again, when you adjust for educational level, geographic location, job title, years of experience, whether or not the person is a parent, whether or not the person is married, Black women and women of color earn almost less than half of what white men earn working in the same professions. And we wonder how these cycles are intergenerational. We wonder how these things are passed down from one generation to another. We talk so much about trying to build generational wealth. I did a whole TikTok series about it this summer, about the Black diaspora's attempts to build generational wealth and some of their missteps. How can we build generational wealth if we don't acknowledge these very real patriarchal systemic structures? Most of us have to work for a living. So let's start there before we get into any discussions about generational wealth. And most people accumulate wealth over time through wages earned by working for a living. So if women who are working over a lifetime, along with men who are working over a lifetime, and the women are earning less than half of what the men earn over the same lifetime, then it's no wonder that the feminization of poverty follows women from the cradle to the motherfucking grave. It's no wonder then. So not only do more women than men struggle to cover everyday expenses due to the gender wage gap, but the gap compounds over a lifetime. So what does that mean? That means women end up with fewer resources and savings than men. This represents a significant factor that contributes to the gender disparity in poverty rates among women and men aged 75 and older. Because again, if women and men are working for the same amount of time over the course of a lifetime in the same job that requires the same qualifications, and the same educational level or the same training, and the women are earning less than half of what the men are earning, then by the time you reach old age, then yes, the woman would still be in poverty, whereas the men are not. Again, patriarchal systems follow women from the cradle to the grave. In fact, I would adjust that statement. I would amend that statement to state instead that patriarchal systems follow women from in utero to the grave. We don't even have to be born to be in a cradle. In utero is when all this shit starts. It's when all this shit starts to pop off. Okay? So the gender wage gap is driven, by a host of different factors that include differences in jobs or industries worked, hours worked, years of experience. Although differences in education or occupation do not explain away the gap, because again, the gap is found in professions that both men and women occupy at the same rates, that have the same educational requirements, that have the same training / years of experience requirements, etc. So what does all of that academic, ivory towered mumbo jumbo speak mean in layman's terms, in plain English? Women lawyers and men lawyers will, if without anything else adjusted for like any other factors, men lawyers will still out-earn women lawyers, even though women lawyers are also lawyers working in the same exact field with the same exact years of experience. No matter what occupation or industry or sector, the man will always earn more than the woman. That's what the feminization of poverty tells us. And this is backed up by statistics and facts. So before you twist your bony, ashy ass ankles sprinting to the comment section of this podcast or this YouTube video, just know that I believe in the power of the block button. I also believe in the power of the reporting button. And I also don't give a fuck. Argue with the stats and the facts. Don't argue with me. I have a law degree, so I don't argue for free. Oh, okay. Discrimination based on gender, race, and/or ethnicity plays a significant role in the wage gap, depressing women's earnings both directly but by paying women unequally, and indirectly through sex and race-based structural biases that can influence the jobs women hold and the number of hours they work. So that's the major contributing cause to the feminization of poverty. Other contributing factors to the feminization of poverty include the gender wealth gap, which states that women are less likely to have the savings and wealth necessary to weather financial shocks and provide for themselves and their families throughout their lifetimes, as well as occupational segregation into low-paying jobs. And what that one means is that women are disproportionately represented in certain occupations, specifically low-wage jobs, due to pervasive gender roles, along with expectations that women's work is by its very nature inherently low-skilled, and the systemic undervaluing of women's labor. I want to touch on that systemic undervaluing of women's labor because once upon a time, women here in this country could not obtain university level education. That was literally outlawed. There were laws and statutes and legislation signed in the books that said women could not obtain post-secondary, if secondary education here in this very country, much less Black women. But I'm just going to use the phrase women in general, right? The very second that women started to out-educate our male counterparts, like very, very recently in the 21st century, is the same exact time all of this rhetoric sprang up about, all you bitches have is just your little foo-foo college degree. Oh, so who gives a fuck? You have your international relations degree. Who gives a fuck that you have your human resources degree, or that you have your little master's degree, or that you have your little bachelor's in sociology? What even is sociology? Who gives a fuck that you have your medical degree or that you have a law degree? Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit is the same men who, in a system where they are designed to prevail, still fail nonetheless. That's who gives a shit. My little degree would mean more in your hands as the man because you would be paid more for it than I am as the woman. So the minute women started earning more degrees and outpacing men in educational sectors is the minute that having a college degree as a woman is just a little dismissal. It's just a foo-foo little thing. Oh, whoop-de-doo. Oh, you have your degree. You must think you know everything. Is your degree going to keep you warm at night? Motherfucker, yes, the fuck it is, because the degree got me the job that pays the bills, that keeps this furnace going in the winter time. Can I get an amen, motherfucker? Like, please don't play with me. What do I say all the time? I'm a bad bee with a law degree, so I don't argue for free. Argue with that busted-looking motherfucker in the mirror. Carrying on. Another contributing factor to feminization of poverty here in America is the lack of access to child care. And every single mom listening to this or watching this knows exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. You have to be at work. You have to get shit done, because if you're not paying these bills, the lights will not stay on, these kids won't get fed, and there'll be no roof over your head. But you can't find anybody to watch said kids. Mind you, you are not the only person who made said children. Hello, but somehow the onus of childcare falls on the woman, while at the same time, the onus of being financial head of household also falls on the woman with the children. Can we get into it? Can we discuss? My mom raised my sister and I as a single mother, so I watched this firsthand before I ever knew anything about a statistic, or before I ever knew what the Center for American Progress was, before I knew what a motherfucking law degree was. I saw this with mine own eyes. My mother had to get shit together. No college degree, barely had legal status in this country. We were undocumented immigrants for 15 bombaras pussyclot years, right? And she still had to figure shit out. While the men in her life, including my father, made excuses, my mother, the woman, made shit happen. Okay? In a system that is designed for men to prevail, yet and still they fail. And where women are not failing, they're making fun of us for not failing. So you're making fun of me because I have a college degree? So is that where we are today in America? We make fun of intelligent people, learned scholars. We make fun of them for that. That's where our misinformation, anti-intellectual rhetoric is that far gone. So if I have my little foo-foo college degree, and it's foo-foo because it's in my hands as the woman, you're the man. Why don't you have a college degree? You have a motherfucking birth certificate. That's what you have. You don't even have a driver's license. Your shit has been suspended or revoked for God knows how long. Every time you get in the car and drive, you're driving on a wing and a prayer that some angry state trooper with a vendetta doesn't pull your sorry ass over. But making fun of my college degree. Isn't the system designed for you to prevail? I'm clearly prevailing more than you, so am I the man more than you? Is that what it is? The college degree is worth less because it's in my hands. The law degree you devalue because it's in my hands, because I'm a woman. And I'm just saying the quiet part out loud. You don't have to like it. I don't give a fuck. You don't like yourself, so why should I care what you like? I'm sorry, I'm on a roll. This is Thanksgiving. I shouldn't be using such profane language. But I should. I can and I will. But yes, lack of access to childcare. Every mom knows that, because the United States lacks supportive work-family policies such as adequate funding for childcare, a national paid family and medical leave program, and an earned paid sick leave law, which would help women manage work and caregiving responsibilities. I've read in many places, I believe America is the only first world industrialized country that does not have mandatory paid maternal leave. I had to breathe hard and swallow my spit to say that America, big old, powerful, strong America, the preeminent global superpower, can't pay the ladies who want to have kids? That just makes me sick to my stomach. Then how exactly do they expect society to continue to proliferate? They don't. They want us to just continue producing workers and taxpayers and low-wage, low-earning, oppressed individuals. And I will not be using my womb and my physical body to contribute to American capitalism. I'm sorry. I'm not doing that. Call that a radical position. I may be in a very radical minority having that view. I don't give a fuck. Alexandra Unfiltered, okay? The United States is an outlier among developed countries in failing to guarantee access to paid family and medical leave and paid sick leave, which would allow workers time away from work to recover from an illness, care for a sick family member, or care for a new child. If you're a mom, regardless, think about you're being a mother, okay? Don't think about whether you're married or whether you're partner. Don't think about your partner right now, your romantic male partner who, oh, well, I have an involved romantic partner, or my husband does a lot of the work. Pretend he's dead, all right? Think about you as the mom. When the child is sick and they go to school or they go to daycare and they're sick, who does the school call? Who does the daycare center call when the child is sick? When the child is experiencing disciplinary issues and you have to stop what you're doing and leave work to go tend to the sick child or to go tend to the troubled child, who does the doctor's office call? Who does the emergency room call? Who is most likely to be listed as the emergency next of kin? The mother. And oh, that's just the way it is. Mothers are just naturally more maternal. Okay, if that's the case, then fathers are naturally more paternal and men are naturally more manly. So therefore, all men should be rich. All men should be providers and protectors. If that's the case, since it's in their blood, it's in their DNA, right? And yet we have loser, bummy ass men who get on podcasts and make excuses for why they fail in a system that is designed for them to prevail, right? By that same logic? Yeah, no, you don't. Oh, okay. So what did I say about the patriarchy? It knows what it's doing. From the cradle to the grave, from the uterus to the grave. You could be disabled, not disabled. You happen to be born a woman and you happen to come about having a disability by virtue of illness or accident. And then you happen to be LGBTQ. Then you also happen to have children. And the last factor I wanted to touch on here that contributes to the feminization of poverty is domestic violence, otherwise known as intimate partner abuse or intimate partner violence. Domestic violence can worsen women's economic standing in the United States, causing them to lose an average of 8 million days of paid work per year. A study published in 2016 found that about 1/4 to slightly more than half of women experiencing homelessness reported that domestic violence was the immediate cause. Pause. I've talked openly about my mother's own journey surviving intimate partner violence and surviving intimate partner abuse at the hands of my father. And one of the absolute worst things we have experienced in the aftermath of surviving that intimate partner abuse has absolutely been the poverty that came about as a result of fleeing the abuse. The poverty itself is so insidious and was so all-consuming and destructive in nature. In some ways, the poverty was sometimes worse than the violence, the physical violence itself, because the physical violence has a start and has a stop. It has a beginning and an end. The poverty itself that came about from leaving the domestic violence situation and experiencing near homelessness, that poverty felt like it had no end in sight. And that is what I will conclude on. That is exactly what the feminization of poverty in the United States does to women here. It feels as though there is no end, there is no reprieve, there is no hope. From the moment you are in uterus and it is determined that your sex is that of a female or a woman, until the moment you die, you have to fight systems that our male counterparts don't even have to think about. They just breeze through life, not having to think about period poverty, not having to think about the feminization of poverty, not having to think about intimate partner abuse. And even when men experience intimate partner violence, they certainly are not experiencing it at the rates at which women experience it at the hands of men. From the cradle to the grave, the feminization of poverty follows us and haunts us. And it seems as though it is all consuming. There's never an end to it. There's no end in sight. There's no reprieve. There's no knight in shining armor. It feels like there's no cavalry coming to save you. And that's okay. Because even though nobody's coming to save you, you have the tools, you have the knowledge, you have the resources, and you have the power to save yourself. So what does that look like? What does overturning and reducing poverty among women look like here in the United States? It would look like closing the gender wage gap and strengthening protections and combating discriminatory pay practices within workspaces in the United States. It would look like closing the gender and racial wealth gaps It would look like policymakers pursuing efforts to close these gaps alongside investments in efforts to build wealth among women, particularly women of color and Black women. It would look like raising the minimum wage and eliminating sub-minimum wages for tipped and disabled workers. It would look like ensuring access to work-family policies that would empower women to access childcare while they work. It would look like continuing to reauthorize the Violence Against Women's Act, aka VAWA, which was the act that brought my mother and I on the path to lawful permanent residency and citizenship here in the US. An act, the Violence Against Women's Act, was originally authored by President Joe Biden, FYI. It would also look like expanding access to unemployment insurance, strengthening food assistance and WIC, and protecting and expanding Medicaid coverage, as well as improving tax credits and fortifying Social Security. To lift women out of poverty, policy solutions must address the myriad ways that structural, systemic, and institutional sexism and racism uniquely burden women and women alone. We have to address these at the policy level and then incorporate these systemic issues into policy solutions. And we have to do this in tandem together. We have to be on the same page as women, that regardless of our race, women, regardless of our race, Caucasian women, we are still women and we share an oppressive class. Once we get on the same page about that, then all this shit is over. Thank you so much for listening to Alexandra Unfiltered. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving holiday. Tune in next week, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our next episode. And in the meantime, bye-bye.